Hi, this talk is about mysticism. As some people say, it starts in a mist and it ends in a schism. But the truth is that in every religion there are different paradigms. That is to say, there are different ways of being religious. There's a rational, intellectual way, there is an emotional, mystical way, there is popular religion, and there's religion for, we'll call them the intellectuals. They all have a place in each different religion that you can possibly think about. But I want to talk about mysticism in Judaism. The truth is that there's always been a mystical dimension to the Jewish experience. You just have to think of what happened on Mount Sinai. On the one hand, you had the revelation of law, and on the other hand you had the fire and the pyrotechnics and the lightning and the experience that was frightening for some and exciting for others. And in the Bible, in effect, there's always been two parallel systems. The system of law that's developed from Sinai and continues right through, and at the same time there is what we would call the mystical experience. What's the difference? Law is something that requires obedience. It's a behavioral pattern that is supposed to guide your life. But you can obey every letter of the law and never experience anything, never experience God, for example. It's this experience which lies at the root of what we call mysticism. In the Bible, you have, for example, Elijah the prophet who disappears in a chariot of fire. In the Talmud, you have the famous story of the rabbi who had to hide in a cave, Shimon bar Yochai, for many years to avoid the Romans. And when he came out of the cave, he started burning people up because he didn't approve of them. Fire becomes an analogy for the passion of the mystical experience, but also of the dangers of the mystical experience. Too much mysticism and you can go out of control, even mad. On the other hand, if you're too rigid in just obeying the law, you miss the beauty of the experience. Round about 2,000 years ago, there were two different schools of mystics within Judaism. There were those who wanted to try to reach God and thought that the way to reach God was through the human form. If man was created in the image of God, if you could understand how a human works, this would be the best way of getting to understand how God works. And then on the other hand, you had those who looked at the world, the universe, if you like, the palace with all its different spheres and with its different dimensions, and thought if you could understand the world properly, then you would be able to understand God better. And both these different traditions continued and developed. In medieval times, they formulate something called Kabbalah, but Kabbalah simply means a received tradition, a tradition of mysticism going back a long way. But in medieval times, this developed itself much more structurally than it had before. And this mystical tradition developed in three different ways. One was, we'll call it intellectual. How do we understand this universe? The philosophers want to understand the universe from a philosophical point of view, from a rational point of view, from a scientific point of view. On the other hand, you can look at the mystical tradition as one not of trying to understand, but rather trying to experience. What are the ways we can get closer to God? What are the practices? What are the meditations? What are the formulae for trying to break through? And then, of course, you have what really doesn't belong but was included, the magic hocus pocus type of Kabbalah, of mysticism. How do I get control of other people, or how do I prevent other people from getting control over me? And I don't want to deal with that magical side, because those of you who follow me before know that I'm not really that excited by it. What excites me is, how do we combine the religious way of life with the mystical experience? You see, if you only look for the easy solution and the shortcut, you never get anywhere. For example, there's no way of being fit overnight without losing sleep. Become fit, or indeed to lose weight, you need to combine the will, the desire to do it, with a regime, with a structure that involves it day to day in the way you live your life. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. And the same thing is true about mysticism. Mysticism is an attempt to find a holistic solution, a solution that includes your mind and your body, that includes the rational and the non-rational, that combines them all in a way that gets you to experience God and gets you to experience a religious way of life. Which is why, if you think you can achieve this without living a religious life, then it's like trying to be fit without going regularly to the gym. You might like the idea, you might think the idea is a very good one, but you won't be able to translate it into the way you live your life, in which case to make it meaningful. The idea of Torah, with its behavioral and with its mystical elements, is to try to get a human being to live life effectively, to live life well. And one of the things that you need to do to achieve that is to think before you act. How should I face this issue? Should I be aggressive or should I be passive? Should I use my cognitive information or should I use my intuitive information? Should I try to control or should I allow it to try to influence me? This is true of ideas and it's true of people. If I go into a negotiation, do I go in to fight hard or do I fight gently? Do I go into this deal looking for the maximum or do I go into this deal looking for a reasonable amount? Every situation requires thinking about it before you act. And the religious tradition therefore has all these rituals that are designed just to get you to think before you eat, before you behave, to try to get you not to become enslaved and acting automatically because that's what everybody else is doing. But at the same time, it wants you to bring spirituality into your life as much as you can. And you only get this if you meditate, if you think. You don't just pray to say the words, but you pray in order to engage with God, in order to use all your different faculties. Most people will tell us that human beings only use a fraction of what their minds are capable of achieving. And the aim of mysticism is to try to add that extra spiritual dimension by giving you practices, by giving you exercises. And the result of this is that you have a broader view of the world, a more complex and a more in-depth dimension. And this is the way to help you live and experience a better life. Have a nice day.